Chapter 1. The Descent into Darkness. My name is Marcus Kane. A year ago, I was a master of steel, a structural engineer whose life was a perfect geometry of trusses and beams. My world was a blueprint of precise measurements, of light and shadow, and the elegant dance of metal. My work was my life, and my world was a canvas of sight and sound. But that all changed on one bright, clear Thursday when my world was suddenly consumed by a gray void. It was a routine inspection on a new suspension bridge I was building. A sudden snap, the roar of a tearing cable, and a blinding flash. I heard the frantic shouts of my crew, the screech of metal, and the sickening thud of the platform giving way beneath me. I was 100 feet above the ground, but it wasn't the fall that was the most terrifying. The most terrifying thing was the darkness that came after. The brilliant light had permanently seared my retinas, leaving me in an eternal, suffocating twilight. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain, surgeries, and the dawning of a new, terrifying reality. I was a man who lived by sight, and now my world was a silent void. My flawless sense of direction was gone, my balance disappeared, and my former self was a ghost. I became a prisoner in my own body, in my own mind, and in my own home. Or so I thought. My wife Sarah became my sole anchor in this new, frightening world. She was a woman of infinite patience, her soothing voice and gentle touches guiding me through every corner of our once familiar home. She would read me the newspaper in the mornings, her voice the only sound in a house that once echoed with the clang of my tools. She was my eyes, my guide, my only connection to the world I had lost. My best friend, Julian, became my shadow. He was a former military pilot, a man of quiet strength, with a deep, booming laugh I could recognize anywhere. After the accident, he came every day. He would read me books, take me on walks in the park, and fill the silence with the familiar banter we had shared since high school. He was the only one who didn't pity me. He treated me the same as before, and for that I was eternally grateful. They were my world, my only connection to the life I had lost. They believed my blindness was my vulnerability. They believed it made me an easy target, a harmless fool who couldn't see their betrayal. They were wrong. What they didn't understand was that the loss of my sight had sharpened my other senses to a terrifying degree. My world was no longer visual. It was a symphony of sounds, a canvas of touch, a map of sense. I could hear the subtle change in Sarah's breathing when I entered a room. I could feel the tension in Julian's shoulders as he helped me sit, and I could sense the shift in the air when they thought I couldn't hear them. The lies were like breadcrumbs, carefully scattered along the trail of their deception. But my other senses were finely tuned hounds, and they caught the scent of every single one. The first crack in my perfect world appeared 3 months ago, but looking back, it had been there all along, a hairline fracture I couldn't see. Sarah was reading me my bank statement, our weekly ritual. My military pension was modest, but my company's profit was massive. I had built an empire, a multi-million-dollar business that Julian, my second-in-command, now ran. "Marcus, dear," she said, her voice a little too gentle, "there's a small discrepancy. $1,000 is missing from your personal account. It must be a bank error. I'll call them." $1,000, a small amount for a man who had lost everything. But a week later, another 1,000 was gone. It was still a bank error, she assured me. It wasn't an error. It was a carefully planned theft. The second lie was a familiar laugh. Julian's booming laugh was something I would recognize anywhere. One evening, as Sarah and I were watching a movie, I heard it in our neighbor's yard. The sound was distinct, unmistakable. But our neighbor was an elderly woman who lived alone. When I asked Sarah about it, she waved it off. "It must be a strange sound, dear," she said, her hand reaching for mine, a gesture that felt more like a distraction than a comfort. "Your hearing has been too sensitive lately." She was wrong. My hearing wasn't sensitive. It was a weapon. The lies started small, almost imperceptible. I noticed a different scent on Sarah's clothing, a faint, musky cologne that wasn't mine. I began to build a mental map of our home, a world I could no longer see, but could feel and hear with terrifying accuracy. I knew the exact number of steps from the kitchen to the bedroom, the precise weight of a pillow, the faint creak of a floorboard in the hallway. I noticed the way Sarah's hand would pull back from mine when I reached for her, a small, imperceptible movement I could feel in the air. I began to sense the changes in their touch, from a guiding touch to a hesitant, almost nervous one. The first major piece of evidence came when I felt a faint, familiar scent on Julian's hands as he helped me into the car. It was the aroma of my favorite 20-year-old scotch, which I kept in a special locked cabinet in my office. The lock, a small and simple padlock, they thought I would never notice the difference. But I could feel the difference in the metal. It was a brand new lock. They had replaced the old one, assuming I wouldn't know. The scent on his hands, a faint aroma of aged leather and amber, was my proof. It was not a mistake. It was an admission. I knew the game had changed. The small lies and thefts were only the beginning. I was a man who built his life on precision, and I knew that every detail mattered. Now I had a new mission, to find the truth, to uncover the secrets they believed were hidden. My blindness was no longer a curse. It was a cloak. I was a ghost in my own home, a silent observer in the world they believed was theirs. The true horror, however, had yet to come. The financial discrepancies, the strange scents, the moved items, all of it was merely a prelude to a much darker symphony. I had a feeling the silence I lived in was about to be broken by a very different kind of sound. Chapter 2. The Scent of Treachery. The quiet war in my home had begun. I was no longer a helpless victim, but a detective, using my heightened senses as my tools. My house became my crime scene, and Julian and Sarah, my unsuspecting suspects. My days were filled with a new routine, listening, feeling, and smelling. I set a new, intricate trap in my office. A thin, almost invisible thread was stretched across the doorway, and a piece of paper I had carefully placed on the floor was meant to fall if the thread was disturbed. I would know if they had been in my office. I had a feeling they had been, and that feeling became a weapon. The scent on Julian's hands wasn't just the smell of my scotch. It was something else. A faint smell of oil, grease, and a very distinct metallic aroma that I had only ever smelled in my workshop. My workshop was a place they never went. It was a place of dangerous tools, of heavy machinery, and of my old life. They thought my old life was gone for good. They were wrong. I decided to inspect the workshop. It was in a separate building at the back of my property, a place I hadn't entered since the accident. The door I knew had a specific feel, a slight give in the wood and a creak in the hinges. When I reached the door, I didn't feel the give of the wood. It was different. I felt the smooth, cold metal of a new lock and the faint, sweet smell of a new lubricant. They had broken in. But why? I managed to get a spare key from a hidden lockbox in my garden, a place they didn't know about. I opened the door, and the air hit me like a physical blow. The scent of my workshop, the scent of metal, of wood, of oil, was a memory, a ghost of my past. But under it, I smelled something new. The faint scent of gasoline, of sawdust, and of something else, something I couldn't place. I walked into the workshop, my cane my only guide. I used my hands to feel the tools, the machinery, the workbenches. I felt the change in the air, a different density, a different temperature. I felt the tools that were once clean and organized were now covered in a thin layer of dust. They had been used. But for what? The puzzle was becoming more and more complex. The money, the strange scents, the lies, all of it was leading to a climax I didn't want to see. But I had to. I had to know the truth. The final piece of the puzzle came from a source I never expected. My phone. I had a small voice-activated recorder I used for notes. One day I accidentally activated it, and I heard a conversation I was never meant to hear. It was Julian, and a man with a deep, gruff voice, a voice that I recognized from my past. It was a lawyer, a man I had worked with on a few of my most difficult projects. He was a man of connections, a man who worked with the city's most powerful and most dangerous. He was a man you didn't want to cross. "The life insurance policy," he said. "It's set. A tragic accident, a blind man, disoriented by a fire. A simple case, but we have to make sure there are no witnesses." Julian's voice was filled with a cold finality. "Don't worry," he said. "The house is my domain. I'll make sure there are no witnesses." I stopped breathing. The air in the room felt thin, suffocating. They were going to kill me, right here, in my own home, in my own kitchen. I heard the sharp metallic click of a gun being unlatched. I knew it was Julian, and I knew he was close. They thought I was an easy target, a blind man with nowhere to run. They were wrong. I'd spent the last year memorizing my house, every corner, every piece of furniture, every obstacle. My mind's eye was a detailed map, a battle plan. I moved with a speed that shocked them. I grabbed a chair and threw it at the sound of Julian's footsteps. He yelped as it hit him in the chest, and the gun clattered to the floor. I heard Sarah scream, and I knew she was reaching for the gun. But I was faster. I lunged at the sound of her voice, tackling her to the floor. I grabbed her wrists, twisted them behind her back, and held her. "The game is over, Sarah. You and Julian are done." The front door burst open. I'd called the police a minute before, using my pre-programmed emergency dial. They found the gun, the forged papers, the hidden money. My wife and my best friend, the people I had trusted with my life, were now in handcuffs, their lies exposed. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that a blind man, a broken man, could outsmart them. The next few hours were a blur of statements, evidence, and confessions. I sat in a police car, the sounds of my past life echoing in the distance. The police had a lot of questions. I gave them answers, a story I had been piecing together for months. They asked about my family, my friends, my career. I told them everything, a life of precision and detail, a life that was now shattered. Chapter 3. The Ghost in the House. The quiet war in my home was over, but the war in my mind was just beginning. In the aftermath of the arrests, the house became a crime scene. Forensic teams meticulously cataloged every piece of evidence. The police found the hidden money in a loose floorboard in my office. They found the forged documents in a locked safe in the workshop. They found the gun, a small, unregistered pistol Julian had kept hidden in his car. They found everything, but they didn't find the truth. The truth was in my mind. It was in the sounds, the scents, the textures I had meticulously catalogued for months. It was in the words I had overheard, in the subtle changes in their touch, in the lies they had so carefully constructed. The truth was in the darkness, and I was the only one who could see it. The police were impressed. They had never seen a case like this before. A blind man, a man who had lost everything, had outsmarted two of the city's most cunning criminals. They asked me to testify. I agreed. I had to. I had to make sure they paid for what they did. The trial was a circus. The media had a field day. The blind man's revenge. The blind detective. The man who saw the truth. I was a hero, a celebrity, a symbol of hope. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man who had lost everything. Sarah and Julian's lawyers tried to discredit me. They said I was a man who had lost his mind, a man who was paranoid, a man who was hallucinating. They said I was a victim of my own imagination, but they couldn't argue with the evidence. The bank statements, the forged documents, the gun, the recordings on my phone. The evidence was overwhelming. I took the stand. I was a man who had built my life on precision, and I was ready to testify. I told them everything. I told them about the small lies, the petty thefts, the forged documents. I told them about the strange scents, the misplaced objects, the overheard conversations. I told them about the plan to kill me. I told them about the life insurance policy, the money, the conspiracy. I told them about the trap I had set. I finished my testimony, and the courtroom was silent. The jury was silent. The judge was silent. The lawyers were silent. They couldn't argue with the truth. They couldn't argue with the facts. The verdict came back in a matter of hours. Guilty. Sarah and Julian were sentenced to life in prison. I was a free man. I had won. But I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a man who had lost everything. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings, of interviews, of therapy sessions. I was a man who had to rebuild my life from the ground up. I had to learn to trust myself again, to trust my new senses, to trust the world. I had to learn to live with the truth. I sold the house. The memories of Sarah and Julian, of their betrayal, were too strong. I moved to a small apartment in a new city, a blank slate where I could start over. I spent a year in therapy, learning to trust myself again, learning to trust my new senses. I learned to see the world not as a place of danger, but as a place of opportunity. I started a foundation for veterans with disabilities, a place where they could learn to use their other senses to navigate the world. I taught them how to use their hearing to find their way, how to use their touch to create art, how to use their minds to build a new life. I told them my story, a story of betrayal and redemption, a story of how a man who lost his sight found his way back to the light. The foundation grew. We hired a team of therapists, a team of veterans who had overcome their own disabilities. We created a program that was a beacon of hope for people who had lost everything. We taught them that their disabilities weren't a curse. They were a gift, a new way of seeing the world. And I finally loved again. I met a woman, a kind, patient therapist who had lost her own sight in an accident. She taught me that love was not about sight, but about trust. She taught me that the best way to see the world was with a person who could see it with you, with their heart and their soul. We fell in love. We married. We had a child. Our life was not about what we could see. It was about what we could feel. My story became a symbol of hope. It was a story about a man who lost everything, but found his way back to the light. It was a story about a man who was betrayed by the people he loved, but found his way back to trust. It was a story about a man who was a prisoner in his own mind, but found his way back to freedom. Chapter 4. Justice and a New Beginning. My story became a symbol of hope. It was a story about a man who lost everything, but found his way back to the light. It was a story about a man who was betrayed by the people he loved, but found his way back to trust. It was a story about a man who was a prisoner in his own mind, but found his way back to freedom. And I finally learned to love again. I met a woman, a kind, patient therapist who had lost her own sight in an accident. She taught me that love wasn't about sight, but about trust. She taught me that the best way to see the world was with a person who could see it with you, with their heart and their soul. We fell in love. We married. We had a child. Our life wasn't about what we could see. It was about what we could feel. I started a foundation for veterans with disabilities, a place where they could learn to use their other senses to navigate the world. I taught them how to use their hearing to find their way, how to use their touch to create art, how to use their minds to build a new life. I told them my story, a story of betrayal and redemption, a story of how a man who lost his sight found his way back to the light. The foundation grew. We hired a team of therapists, a team of veterans who had overcome their own disabilities. We created a program that was a beacon of hope for people who had lost everything. We taught them that their disabilities weren't a curse, they were a gift, a new way of seeing the world. And I finally learned to forgive. I visited Sarah and Julian in prison. I told them I forgave them. I told them I forgave them for the lies, for the betrayals, for the attempted murder. I told them I forgave them not for them, but for me. I couldn't live with the hatred. I couldn't live with the anger. I couldn't live with the pain. I had to let it go. I left the prison a free man. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. My wife and best friend had stolen everything, but they had left me with the one thing that mattered most, my truth. And that, I was now learning, was worth more than all the money in the world. My life is now a testament to the power of truth. It is a testament to the power of forgiveness. It is a testament to the power of love. It is a testament to the power of hope. It is a testament to the power of a man who lost his sight but found his way back to the light. It is a testament to the power of a man who was a prisoner in his own mind but found his way back to freedom. It is a testament to the power of a man who was betrayed by the people he loved but found his way back to trust. And it is a testament to the power of a man who was a victim but found his way back to life. My name is Marcus Kane, and I am a survivor. I am a hero. I am a symbol of hope. I am a testament to the power of a man who lost his sight but found his way back to the light. I am a testament to the power of a man who was a prisoner in his own mind but found his way back to freedom. I am a testament to the power of a man who was betrayed by the people he loved but found his way back to trust. And it is a testament to the power of a man who was a victim but found his way back to life.